David always thought of himself as a pretty level-headed guy. He works as a security guard. You don't get into that line of work if you're easily rattled. But there he was, sitting in his car at a cemetery, of all places. It was just another night shift, or so he thought. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, and the only light came from the lamp near the gate. The filming company was shooting a scene for 2 days at the location, and they needed security guards to look after their equipment for the evening. David and his coworker Jake were dispatched to work from 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. the next day at the cemetery. Upon arrival, they were told by the filming director to post outside the gate on the gravel driveway and keep an eye on all the equipment placed near the gate. After the crew wrapped up for the day, they left David and Jake with a generator, some electrical cables, and a portable restroom. Just keep an eye on things, they said before they left for the night. David didn't mind, really. David had his phone, a movie queued up on Netflix, and he figured he could make it through the night without too much hassle. Nothing unusual had transpired at the first half of their shift. David had his dinner in his car, a Subway sandwich, a bag of chips, and a drink while Jake puffed away on his cigarette outside. They shared a few laughs, talked about the ridiculousness of shooting a horror movie in a cemetery. Who thought that was a good idea? But hey, it was a job and they needed the hours. Their supervisor came and checked on them for a brief moment, then left. Afterwards, David and Jake were left on their own for the night. So, David settled in his car with Jake. He put on a movie from Netflix and propped up his phone on the dash. The glow of the screen illuminating their faces, the sound of the movie drowning out the silence of the cemetery. But then, around 3 a.m, everything changed. It was like the air shifted, thickened with an unamenable tension. They were halfway through a scene when they heard it, a loud scream. Not just any scream, but it sounded like a woman screaming in agony. The scream that sliced through the night like a knife, although it only lasted little over 2 minutes. It echoed, reverberating off the gravestones, sending a chill racing down their spines. David glanced over at Jake, who had gone pale, his eyes wide. "What was that?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but that definitely didn't sound like an animal. I am pretty spooked right now, bro." "What the fuck was that?" "It sounded like a woman's scream," David replied, trying to sound braver than he felt. David started the ignition and turned on his high beams, but staff shinged directly into the cemetery. But there was nothing, just darkness and the looming silhouettes of gravestones and trees. Jake didn't need to say anything more. David could see the fear creeping into his expression. He was already halfway back to his car, fumbling with the door handle. "I'm going to hop inside my car and start the engine. If that thing comes at us, I'm bailing out of here," Jake said. David didn't blame him. He felt the same way. The comforting hum of the car motor was a small relief, but it didn't erase the dread pooling in his stomach. They both sat in their cars respectively, engines running, the headlights casting long shadows into the cemetery, the occasional rustle of leaves, the crows cawing in unison, ominously. All these eerie sounds made it more terrifying. They sat there, 2 grown men, terrified in their cars, waiting for dawn to break. The minutes dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity. David tried to focus on the movie, but the images blurred together, his mind racing with thoughts of what could be lurking in the shadows. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Every time a branch snapped or a leaf rustled, he jumped with his heart racing. He glanced at Jake, who was staring intently into the darkness, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. "What if it's a prank?" David suggested, trying to rationalize the fear. "Maybe the film crew is messing with us." "Yeah, but what if it's not?" Jake countered. His voice was shaky. "What if it's something else, something more sinister? Plus, we saw the crews left. We are the only people here, bro." David didn't want to think about that. He wanted to believe it was just a prank, just someone messing around in the cemetery. But deep down, he knew that scream had been real, raw, filled with a kind of terror that made his skin crawl. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, David felt a wave of relief wash over him. The shadows receded, and the cemetery transformed from a place of dread to one of quiet stillness. The film crew started arriving, their chatter and laughter breaking the tension that had settled over the night. Jake recounted the eerie scream he heard to some of the filming crews. They started conversing. David was tired and ready to head home to sleep. Jake and David exchanged glances, a silent agreement passing between them. They made it through the night, but David knew that scream would likely haunt him for a while. He always thought of himself as a tough guy, but that night had shown him that fear can creep in when someone least expects it. As David drove off in his car, he couldn't shake the feeling that some things are better left undisturbed, especially in a place like this.